There are some stories in Hollywood that disappear with time, slowly fading into the background as newer scandals and fresher headlines replace them. But there are other stories, heavier, darker, more emotional, that do not fade at all. Instead, they return years later with a weight that cannot be ignored. Demi Moore's story with Ashton Kutcher is one of those stories. For years, people only saw the glamour of their life together. The red carpet smiles, the blended family, the glowing interviews, and the idea that an older woman and a younger man had somehow rewritten the rules of love in Hollywood. But at 62 years old, Demi Moore finally speaks about the truth she carried quietly for almost 2 decades. And the truth is nothing like the fairy tale the world believed. She is now looking back at her younger self with a kind of clarity she never had in her 20s, 30s, or 40s. She is no longer afraid to speak about the pain, the secrets, and the emotional wounds that shaped the darkest years of her life. When she first met Ashton Kutcher in 2003, she was 40 years old and healing from a painful divorce. Ashton, only 25 at the time, came into her life with charm, admiration, and warmth that she had not felt in years. Their first conversation lasted 8 hours, making Demi believe she had found someone who understood her heart and accepted her broken parts. To the world, it looked like a miracle love story. A young, successful actor falling in love with a strong woman who had already lived a lifetime in Hollywood. They quickly blended their families, brought Ashton into the lives of Demi's daughters, and even found respectful friendship with Bruce Willis. They spoke openly in interviews about their happiness, and their marriage became a symbol of modern romance. But behind the cameras, something much heavier was happening. Before the wedding, Demi suffered a 6-month miscarriage, a loss that shook her to her core. She blamed herself, believing her occasional drinking early in the pregnancy caused a tragedy. The grief became a silent wall between them, even as they tried IVF and other treatments. Ashton said the loss made him ready for fatherhood, but for Demi, it opened a dark emotional space she didn't know how to escape. And while the public saw a glowing couple inside their home, the first cracks had already begun to form. Cracks that would later turn into deep wounds, secrets, and betrayals that Demi carried alone for years. At 62, she now reveals that the darkest part of their marriage was not the cheating, not the fights, and not even the emotional distance. It was something far more subtle and painful. The slow loss of her sense of self, the way she bent and broke her boundaries in hopes of feeling loved, and the realization that she had allowed herself to disappear in the name of keeping someone else happy. After miscarriage, Demi Moore entered one of the most fragile periods of her life. For nearly 20 years she had been sober, fighting hard to escape the addictions that once controlled her. But grief, guilt, and loneliness pushed her back into old habits. Her quiet relapses began with small moments, a drink here, a drink there, until they became a slow collapse she couldn't control. Alcohol, prescription pills, and long nights of shame became part of her hidden life. At the same time, Ashton began drifting away emotionally. The man who once felt like a warm, supportive partner now seemed distant, confused, and sometimes frustrated. Demi felt him slipping away, and in her desperation to keep their marriage alive, she made choices that broke her even more. In her memoir Inside Out, she revealed one of the wounds she carried silently for years. Ashton asked for threesomes, and she agreed, hoping that giving what he wanted would protect their relationship. But instead of saving anything, those decisions left her feeling smaller and more disconnected from herself. She later admitted she felt pressured into acting more modern, more open, and less traditional, so Ashton wouldn't think she was old-fashioned. Every compromise made her feel like she was disappearing piece by piece. Meanwhile, Ashton began embracing a lifestyle that made the emotional distance even harder to ignore. He traveled more, stayed out late, and acted like someone who no longer felt tied to his vows. Demi sensed something was wrong. The coldness in his voice, the excuses, the late-night absences. But she refused to face the truth. Her daughters watched helplessly as their mother slowly faded under the weight of fear and guilt. The home that once felt filled with laughter became a space of quiet pain and tension. And then came the day that shattered her world completely, their 6th wedding anniversary. Instead of celebrating, Demi woke up to a devastating headline. Ashton Kutcher had cheated with a 22-year-old woman. The betrayal hurt, but the humiliation was even worse because Demi had seen the girl before, handing her number to Ashton right in front of her. And when Ashton tried to excuse his cheating by saying their threesomes blurred the lines, Demi felt a kind of emotional blow she had never known. She realized she had sacrificed part of herself only to be blamed for his betrayal. Worse, she later learned it wasn't the only affair. By the time the truth fully came out, their marriage was already broken beyond repair. Even then, Demi tried to hold everything together in public, appearing with Ashton at events and pretending nothing had happened. But behind closed doors, she was falling apart. Soon after, the emotional pain led to a physical collapse, a seizure at a party caused by starvation, pills, nitrous oxide, and synthetic drugs. It was the beginning of the darkest years of her life. Years where addiction swallowed her identity, her health, and even her relationship with her daughters. She became unrecognizable, even to herself, and disappeared from public life entirely. For nearly 3 years, her daughters cut contact for their own safety. Demi entered rehab, fought her way back from the edge, and slowly began rebuilding her life. But healing didn't come quickly. It took years of therapy, recovery, and painful reflection before she could finally speak the words she had hidden for so long. The truth about Ashton, about the manipulation, about the emotional wounds, and about how deeply she had lost herself during their marriage. When Demi Moore finally gathered the strength to speak openly about her years with Ashton Kutcher, many people were shocked, not because they had never seen problems in a relationship, but because they never expected her to share the truth with such honesty. For a long time, the public only saw the glamorous side of their love story. 2 famous actors, a beautiful home, red carpet events, and magazine covers showing them smiling together. But behind those pictures, Demi was silently struggling with pain that she kept hidden from the world. In interviews and in her book, she explained that she tried very hard to be the perfect partner, even when she felt she was losing parts of herself just to keep the relationship going. She said that when someone truly loves another person, they sometimes ignore signs that things are not healthy, because they want to believe that love will win in the end. But as the years passed, Demi found herself dealing with pressures that she had never experienced before, especially pressure to be younger, cooler, and more modern, just to match Ashton's lifestyle. She talked about how she tried to change her habits, her personality, and even her view of relationships to make him happy. This made many of her fans feel sad, because Demi had always been known as a strong, confident woman. Yet here she was admitting that she felt insecure, unsteady, and afraid of losing someone who she thought would be her forever partner. The darkest part of Demi's revelation was not just emotional pain, but the feeling that she'd been slowly pushed into decisions that did not align with her values. She said Ashton had a very different idea of what a relationship should look like, and she wanted to understand him, support him, and show him that she could be open-minded. But over time, she realized that compromising too much can be dangerous, especially when you begin to forget what truly matters to you. Demi explained that when she shared certain things about her marriage, she did not do it to attack Ashton or make herself look like a victim. Instead, she wanted people to understand how easy it is to lose yourself when you love someone more than you love your own peace. She talked about the nights when she cried quietly, wishing she could make the relationship work, and the days when she pretended everything was fine, even though she felt something breaking inside her. She had reached a point where she did not even recognize the person she had become, and that is when she knew she had to face the truth, both about Ashton and about herself. Many people praised Demi for her honesty, saying that it takes great courage to share such painful memories. Others felt sad that a woman who had achieved so much in her life had been pushed to feel small and unsure. But there were also people who were surprised, because they had always believed a marriage ended due to simple differences, not because of deeper emotional wounds. Demi's revelations changed the way many fans looked at the relationship. Suddenly, people saw that behind the Hollywood smiles was a woman trying desperately to hold everything together. And even though her story was painful, it also inspired thousands of others, especially women who had gone through similar experiences but never had the platform to talk about it. By telling her truth, Demi reminded everyone that no matter how successful, famous, or admired someone is, they can still experience heartbreak, betrayal, and insecurity. Her powerful message showed that healing begins when you stop pretending and start accepting what really happened. As Demi Moore continued to open up about her marriage to Ashton Kutcher, she shared that one of the most difficult parts of the relationship was the age difference, even though she never wanted to admit it at the time. When they first started dating, Demi tried to convince herself that age was just a number, and for a while, she truly believed it. Ashton seemed fun, energetic, and full of life, which made Demi feel young and alive in ways she hadn't felt in years. But as their marriage progressed, she started to notice how their lifestyles, priorities, and emotional needs were not as closely aligned as she had hoped. Ashton was in his early 30s, a stage of life where he wanted to explore, experiment, and enjoy new experiences. Demi, on the other hand, already lived through those years and was in a more settled, reflective, and mature period of her life. This difference slowly created tension, and Demi began to sense that Ashton sometimes viewed her as someone who needed to adjust to his pace, rather than someone he wanted to grow with. One of the moments Demi described was how Ashton would sometimes make small comments or jokes that made her feel insecure about her age. These comments might not have seemed harsh to others, but to Demi, they carried an emotional weight that stayed with her long after the conversation ended. She felt as if she needed to prove she was still cool, still attractive, and still capable of keeping up with a younger partner. This emotional pressure began to eat away at her confidence. She talked about how she would look in the mirror and question whether she was good enough, even though she had spent decades building a strong and admired public image. People often forget that even celebrities, who seem glamorous and confident on the outside, can face deep insecurities and moments of vulnerability. Demi's story showed that confidence can be shaken when someone close to you makes you feel like you don't measure up. Demi also explained that Ashton often lived with a mindset that relationships should be flexible and not limited by traditional rules. While Demi understood this idea, she also believed that commitment required boundaries and respect. She revealed that Ashton sometimes used the age difference as a reason to justify certain behaviors, claiming that he needed freedom or new experiences because he was still young. Demi tried to support him, but deep down, she felt that she was compromising too much of her own emotional safety. She admitted that she began to feel like she was chasing someone who didn't always value the same things she did. She wanted stability, loyalty, and emotional closeness, while Ashton seemed more focused on excitement, spontaneity, and the thrill of newness. This difference in expectations slowly created a gap between them that grew wider with time. Another challenge Demi faced was the public perception of their relationship. Even though she tried to ignore the noise, it was impossible to avoid the comments, jokes, and criticisms about their age gap. Every headline, every social media post, and every tabloid story seemed to remind her that people thought the relationship wouldn't last. And while Demi wanted to prove everyone wrong, the constant judgment added more emotional stress to her life. She felt like she was fighting not only to save her marriage, but also protect her dignity from the harsh opinions of the outside world. In her revelations, she shared that these pressures made her feel isolated because she didn't want to talk about the truth with friends or family. She wanted to appear strong, and she wanted people to believe she was in a happy and healthy marriage. But pretending became exhausting, and the burden of carrying everything alone slowly broke her from the inside. That Demi's honesty about these struggles helped people understand that even beautiful, talented, and successful women can feel insecure when they are not treated with emotional care. Her story encouraged others to recognize the warning signs of emotional pressure and self-doubt. It reminded people that love should never make someone feel small or afraid of losing their worth. By sharing this part of her life, Demi gave her audience a powerful message. No matter how much you want a relationship to work, you must never let it take away your self-respect. As Demi moved deeper into her story, she revealed that one of the most painful parts of her marriage to Ashton Kutcher was the feeling that she was constantly trying to fix things on her own while he seemed to drift further away. She explained that at the beginning, Ashton was supportive, sweet, and full of attention. He made her feel important and appreciated, especially at a time when she was still recovering from past heartbreaks. But as the years went by, Demi noticed a slow shift in his behavior. Ashton began spending more time with friends, becoming more distant, and showing less emotional connection. Demi would often try to talk to him, hoping to understand what he was feeling. But instead of opening up, he would act as if everything was normal. This made her feel confused and invisible, like she was trying to hold on to someone who was slowly slipping through her fingers. She said that the silence in their home became louder than any argument, and that emotional distance can be far more painful than any spoken conflict. Demi shared that she tried different ways to rebuild their connection. She planned romantic moments, try to be more spontaneous, and even change parts of her personality just to keep the relationship alive. But every time she made an effort, she felt like Ashton moved a little further away. She explained that love becomes exhausting when only one person is trying to save it. Demi had always believed in commitment, honesty, and working through problems together. But she began to feel like Ashton didn't believe in the same things, or at least wasn't ready for the level of emotional responsibility marriage requires. She talked about how she used to sit alone at night, wondering what she had done wrong, and how she could make Ashton look at her the same way he once did. These thoughts left her trapped in a cycle of self-blame. Even though deep down she knew the problems were bigger than anything she could fix alone, one of the most heartbreaking revelations Demi made was about how Ashton's behavior made her question her own value as a partner and as a woman. She admitted that she felt unimportant and easily replaceable, especially when she noticed how freely Ashton connected with other people outside the marriage. He seemed to enjoy the excitement of new attention, while Demi wanted the comfort of stability and mutual respect. This difference made her feel insecure, even though she had spent years building a career filled with strength, confidence, and success. She said it was shocking to realize that someone could make her feel so small after everything she had overcome in her life. It reminded her that emotional pain can come from the people you love most, and sometimes that pain is deeper than anything the world could throw at you. Another part of the story that moved many people was Demi's description of how lonely she felt even while being married. She explained that loneliness inside a relationship feels much heavier than loneliness when you're single. As a single person, you know you are on your own, so you build your life with that understanding. But when you are married and still feel completely alone, the emptiness becomes harder to bear. Demi said she often felt like she was walking through her own home as if she were a guest, not a wife. She tried to hide her sadness during public events, smiling for cameras, attending parties, and pretending everything was fine. But inside, she was breaking piece by piece. She realized that pretending for too long eventually drains a person's spirit. Through her revelations, Demi also wanted people to understand that emotional neglect can be just as damaging as physical betrayal. She emphasized that feeling unseen, unheard, and unvalued can slowly destroy a person's self-esteem. She hoped that by sharing her story, others would learn to recognize these signs early and avoid losing themselves the way she did. Her courage in speaking out helped countless people understand that it's okay to walk away from a relationship if it is destroying your mental and emotional well-being. Demi's message was clear. Love should lift you up, not break you down. As Demi Moore continued sharing the truth about her marriage, she also spoke about the moment she realized that everything she'd been trying to protect was already gone. She revealed that she had spent many nights telling herself that things would get better, that Ashton would come back emotionally, and that the love they once shared would somehow return. But deep down, she began to understand that love cannot survive when trust, respect, and emotional safety have been damaged. Demi described the heartbreaking moment when she looked at Ashton and felt like she was looking at a stranger. The man who had once made her feel youthful and alive now made her feel exhausted and unsure. She talked about how she began to notice the lies she told herself, lies that were meant to give her hope, but instead kept her trapped. She said one of the hardest lessons she learned was that sometimes holding on hurts more than letting go. She also revealed that the pressure of trying to appear perfect in public made everything worse. Every time they walked a red carpet, every time they posed for a photo, or every time they attended an event together, Demi felt the weight of pretending. She said the smile she wore for cameras was often just a mask hiding her fear and sadness. Even though she was surrounded by people, fans, and media attention, she felt deeply alone because she knew the truth of what was happening behind closed doors. Demi explained that the public image of their marriage was like a beautiful painting, but the real picture underneath was cracked and fading. She carried this burden quietly for years because she didn't want to embarrass Ashton, hurt her children, or disappoint her fans. But the pressure of hiding the truth eventually became too heavy, pushing her into emotional exhaustion. One of the darkest moments Demi shared was when she began to lose her sense of identity. She said that during her marriage, she forgot the strong woman she once was. She forgot her accomplishments, her worth, and her power. Instead, she became someone who worried constantly about keeping her partner happy, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. She described it as slowly disappearing, piece by piece, until she didn't recognize her reflection anymore. At one point, Demi even admitted that she changed her values, her boundaries, and her beliefs just to stop the relationship from falling apart. This revelation shocked many of her fans because Demi had always been seen as a fearless, independent woman. Hearing her talk about losing herself made people understand how deeply she had been hurt. Another important part of Demi's story was how the relationship affected her family. She said that her children could feel the tension, even when she tried to hide it. They watched her struggle, and although they didn't always know the details, they sensed the weight she carried. Demi said she felt guilty for being emotionally distant from her kids during this time, even though she was trying her best to protect them. She admitted that she often put Ashton's needs before her own family's, something she regrets deeply today. But she also explained that when someone is emotionally lost, they sometimes make decisions they wouldn't normally make. She hoped that by being honest, she could help others understand how emotional manipulation or neglect can cloud a person's judgment. That Demi's decision to finally speak out about her darkest moments came from a desire to heal, not just for herself, but for others who had gone through similar experiences. She wanted people to know that even strong women can fall into unhealthy relationships, and that it doesn't make them weak. What matters most is finding the courage to recognize the truth and walk away before the damage becomes permanent. Demi said she eventually reached a point where she realized she deserved better, and that realization became the first step toward rebuilding her life. Her message was simple but powerful. No matter how famous, talented, or admired you are, you must never allow someone to dim your light or make you forget who you truly are. As Demi finally began to accept the painful reality of her marriage, she realized that true healing could only start once she stopped protecting the image of the relationship and started protecting herself. She spoke about the moment she decided to step away from the emotional chaos and look inward. For years, she had been searching for answers in Ashton's behavior. Why it changed, why it pulled away, why it made decisions that hurt her. But now she understood that healing meant looking at her own feelings, not his actions. She admitted that it was terrifying at first. After caring so much about someone else, she had forgotten how to care about herself. She described the stage as if she were standing in front of a mirror again, but this time with clear eyes, no makeup, no smiles for camera, and no excuses. Just herself, raw and honest. She said that this kind of honesty, facing your deepest pain without running away, was the beginning of her transformation. Demi shared that once the marriage ended, she didn't magically feel free or happy. In fact, she felt empty. She explained that when a relationship drains you for years, leaving it doesn't instantly fill the void. The silence that followed was almost as painful as the emotional battles she had fought during her marriage. But in that silence, she also found something she hadn't felt in a long time: space. Space to think, space to breathe, and space to remember who she used to be. She talked about sitting alone in her home, listening to the quiet, and realizing that the peace she felt, even with all the sadness, was better than the chaos she had lived with. She said that healing is slow and messy. Some days she felt strong, and other days she cried for hours. But every day, she moved a little closer to herself again. During this period, Demi also began reconnecting with the people who truly loved her, especially her daughters. She explained that her children had always wanted her to be happy, and seeing her in pain broke their hearts. But they also stood by her, offering comfort, support, and unconditional love. Demi said that looking into her daughter's eyes reminded her of the woman she had once been, a woman who was bold, loving, resilient, and unafraid to face life's challenges. Her children became her source of strength, helping her rebuild her confidence and reminding her that she was worthy of love, respect, and peace. Demi shared that sometimes the people who heal you are not romantic partners, but those who have been quietly loving you all along. Another important part of Demi's healing journey involved reflecting on the lessons she learned from the relationship. Instead of blaming Ashton for everything, she looked at the experience as a teacher. She learned how dangerous it can be to lose yourself in another person, how important it is to maintain your boundaries, and how necessary it is to listen to your inner voice when it warns you that something is wrong. Demi said that ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It only delays the hurt that will come later. She also learned that love should never demand the sacrifice of your identity. She wanted people to understand that compromise is healthy, but self-erasure is not. By sharing these lessons, She hoped others would protect their hearts, especially when they feel pressure to change who they are just to keep someone else close. Demi also made it clear that she does not hate Ashton, even after everything she went through. She explained that holding on to anger only keeps the wounds open, and she didn't want to live with bitterness. Instead, she chose acceptance. Acceptance of what happened, acceptance of mistakes made by both sides, and acceptance that the relationship had run its course. She said that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the pain, but releasing the emotional weight that keeps you stuck. And by releasing that weight, she opened herself to new growth, new love, and a new understanding of her own strength. Demi's story shows that even the darkest experiences can lead to empowerment if you choose to rise from them. As Demi Moore reached her 50s and 60s, she reflected not only on her marriage, but also on how much she had changed as a person. She admitted that her experiences with Ashton Kutcher, the heartbreak, the betrayals, and emotional manipulation had left deep marks on her soul. But at the same time, they taught her something invaluable: resilience. Demi explained that life does not stop for pain, and healing is not a straight path. It is a series of steps forward, often mixed with moments of relapse, doubt, or fear. She described how, in the years after her separation, she learned to pause and examine her feelings, to ask herself why certain memories or behaviors hurt so deeply, and to reclaim her identity one piece at a time. She shared that it was not an easy process. She had to confront her fears, face the shame she felt about her addiction, and accept that she had been manipulated emotionally. But in doing so, she discovered a strength she hadn't fully realized before, a strength that allowed her to say, finally, that she was enough exactly as she was. Part of this journey involved taking responsibility for her own healing. Demi admitted that while Ashton's actions had caused her pain, she could not wait for someone else to fix her life. She had to actively participate in her own recovery. This meant going to therapy, attending counseling, working on her addiction, and rebuilding the bonds with her daughters that had been strained by years of emotional distance. Demi emphasized that rebuilding trust with herself and her family was more important than anything else. She also spoke about the challenge of reconnecting with her public persona after disappearing for years. The media had painted a story of a Hollywood tragedy, but Demi wanted to reclaim her narrative. She wanted people to understand her perspective, not as gossip or scandal, but as a genuine account of a woman fighting for her life, her dignity, and her sense of self. And her interviews and memoir. Demi also revealed how confronting the truth about Ashton changed the way she viewed relationships. She realized that love is not about sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. True love should lift both partners, not diminish one to satisfy the other. She acknowledged that many women, and even men, can find themselves in situations where they compromise too much out of fear of losing someone. Demi used her story as a cautionary tale, encouraging people to recognize when a relationship no longer nourishes their spirit. She said that understanding this early could prevent years of emotional pain. For Demi, the process of sharing her experiences, whether through interviews, memoirs, or personal conversations, became a form of therapy. Speaking out was not about revenge or shame. It was about reclaiming her voice and, in doing so, empowering others to do the same. Demi's honesty about the emotional manipulation and betrayals also highlighted the complexity of human relationships. She made it clear that she did not see herself only as a victim. Instead, she described herself as someone who had been human, vulnerable, and ultimately brave enough to confront painful truths. She acknowledged that the mistakes made in her marriage, including her attempt to bend herself to fit someone else's expectations, were part of her growth. This perspective helped her release anger, resentment, and self-blame, replacing them with self-awareness, compassion, and clarity. She shared that this change in perspective was crucial for her mental health and personal fulfillment. By seeing the relationship as a learning experience rather than just a tragedy, Demi allowed herself to reclaim her power and move forward with dignity. Finally, Demi Moore's story serves as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Despite heartbreak, betrayal, and years of emotional struggle, she emerged stronger, wiser, and more in touch with her authentic self. Her courage to speak openly about her marriage to Ashton Kutcher, her addiction, and her personal struggles inspires others to acknowledge their pain, confront the truth, and embrace the slow, often difficult path to healing. Demi's journey shows that even when life feels dark and overwhelming, clarity, self-love, and perseverance can lead to a renewed sense of identity and purpose. By sharing her story at 62, she not only reclaimed her voice, but also gave countless others permission to confront their own truths, proving that healing is always possible, no matter how long the struggle has been. Another significant aspect of Demi Moore's journey that she emphasized was the power of self-forgiveness. For many years, she carried a heavy burden of guilt, not only for perceived mistakes she made in her marriage, but also for the emotional distance her struggles created with her daughters. Demi shared that she often blamed herself for things that were not her fault. The failed communication with Ashton, the compromises she felt forced to make, and even the ways her addiction had affected her family. For a long time, she felt as if she had failed in every area of her life, from being a mother to being a wife, to even being herself. This self-blame became a silent, invisible weight she carried everywhere she went. But through therapy, meditation, and personal reflection, Demi began to understand that forgiveness was not about excusing harmful actions, but about releasing herself from the endless cycle of guilt and shame. She realized that to heal fully, she had to forgive herself first before she could find peace with anyone else. Demi also reflected on the importance of emotional boundaries, something she admitted she struggled to maintain during her marriage. She explained that she often blurred the lines between her needs and Ashton's, thinking that keeping him happy would save the relationship. But in the process, she lost sight of her own needs, values, and desires. Demi said that learning to set boundaries was one of the hardest lessons of her life, because it required admitting that she could not control another person's behavior, nor could she make someone love her in the way she deserved. She emphasized that boundaries are not selfish. They are essential for self-respect and mental health. By setting limits and speaking her truth, Demi reclaimed a part of herself that had been suppressed for years. This lesson, she said, was crucial for anyone navigating relationships, especially when emotional manipulation or imbalance is present. Another powerful insight Demi shared was how isolation can magnify pain. During her darkest years, she withdrew from friends, avoided social events, and stopped trusting even those closest to her. While this withdrawal was partly due to shame and partly due to fear, it also left her feeling completely alone. Demi described how this isolation made her addictive behaviors worse, as she turned inward and sought comfort in substances instead of reaching out for help. She emphasized that human connection, empathy, and support are essential during times of emotional crisis. Her journey back to health involved reaching out to loved ones, admitting vulnerability, and accepting help when it was offered. This process taught her that asking for support is not a weakness, but a vital part of survival and growth. Demi also used her experience to speak about the danger of trying to meet someone else's expectations at the cost of your own happiness. She admitted that she had often prioritized Ashton's desires over her own well-being, believing that if she sacrificed enough, the relationship would be saved. But instead, she found that this self-erasure only pushed her further into despair. Demi said that many people, especially women, can relate to this feeling. The pressure to be perfect, to compromise endlessly, and hold on to someone who may not prioritize a relationship in the same way. She shared that recognizing your own worth and making decisions based on your needs is not only liberating, but also life-saving. By speaking openly about these lessons, Demi hoped to encourage others to reclaim their autonomy and value before the emotional cost becomes unbearable. Finally, Demi's story demonstrates that true healing is gradual and requires patience, courage, and self-love. She explained that even after years of struggle, she continues to work on herself, learning new ways to cope, grow, and connect with the people she loves. She has rebuilt her relationships with her daughters, reestablished her career on her terms, and reclaimed her public voice to share her truth with honesty and grace. Through her journey, Demi Moore showed that life after trauma is possible, and that strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from confronting it with bravery and compassion. Her message is clear. No matter how dark your past may be, clarity, self-forgiveness, and resilience can guide you toward a brighter, more authentic future. Another important chapter in Demi Moore's life story focuses on the role of therapy and professional guidance in her recovery. Demi has openly shared that therapy was not just a casual or temporary step, but a consistent, sometimes grueling, process that forced her to confront years of suppressed emotions, trauma, and personal mistakes. For decades, she had buried feelings of guilt, sadness, and anger under a facade of public composure, appearing strong while secretly struggling with self-doubt and fear. In therapy, she faced those emotions head-on. She described it as looking into a mirror and seeing not just her physical reflection, but every wound, every regret, and every compromise she had made. While this was painful, it was also liberating. Demi realized that ignoring these emotions had kept her trapped in a cycle of addiction and self-blame, and only by acknowledging the truth could she begin to heal. The therapy sessions helped her recognize patterns of behavior, including how she had allowed herself to be manipulated emotionally, and gave her tools to protect herself in future relationships. In addition to personal therapy, Demi engaged in family counseling with her daughters, which was another vital step toward rebuilding trust and connection. She explained that for years, her children had felt the impact of the emotional distance caused by her struggles, and it had left gaps in their relationship. Reconnecting required immense patience and honesty. Demi admitted that it was humbling to hear how her actions, or sometimes inactions, had affected them, but she also saw this as a chance for growth, for both herself and her children. Through these sessions, Demi learned how to communicate more openly, to listen without judgment, and to validate her daughter's feelings even when they conflicted with her own. She emphasized that the process of healing a family is rarely linear. Some days were full of breakthroughs, while others reopened old wounds. Yet over time, the consistent effort helped rebuild relationships that many had feared were irreparably broken. Demi also discussed how physical health, self-care, and structured routines became essential components of her recovery. After years of neglecting her body through extreme dieting, substance use, and emotional exhaustion, she realized that mental health and physical health are deeply connected. She began to focus on nutrition, exercise, and practices that nurture her mind and body. She explained that caring for oneself is not selfish. It is necessary. By attending to her physical well-being, she gained clarity, strength, and energy, which allowed her to face the emotional challenges of her past with steadier mindset. Demi stressed that anyone recovering from emotional trauma should not underestimate the importance of self-care as the body and mind heal together. Another lesson Demi highlighted was the importance of acknowledging personal responsibility while also recognizing external factors. While she could not control Ashton Kutcher's actions, she could control how she responded, how she allowed events to shape her, and whether she would remain trapped in cycles of self-doubt and pain. She spoke about the delicate balance between forgiveness and self-protection. Forgiving someone does not mean allowing the same behavior to continue. It means releasing the control their actions have over your emotions. Demi explained that this realization was transformative. She began to separate her self-worth from the choices others made, understanding that her value was inherent, not dependent on anyone else's approval or attention. Finally, Demi Moore emphasized that sharing her story was not just therapeutic for her, it was also a responsibility. She wanted to help others, especially women, recognize that being in a relationship that undermines your self-esteem is not normal or acceptable. Her journey illustrates that even the most successful, strong, and admired individuals can experience heartbreak, manipulation, and emotional neglect. By revealing the full truth about her marriage, her struggles with addiction, and the process of recovery, Demi encouraged others to face their own truths, seek help when needed, and take steps to rebuild their lives. Her story serves as a beacon of hope, showing that even after years of suffering, clarity, self-love, and perseverance can lead to healing, personal empowerment, and a renewed sense of identity.